So what does it actually take to just walk away from, what looks like a perfect life?
Hmm.
I mean, picture it.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant boss, secure job, high paying, right there in New York City. You're surrounded by super smart people.
Yeah, the kind of setup most people dream of.
Exactly. And then you leave it all for an idea that, back then at least, must have sounded completely bonkers.
Totally. And that's the scenario we're really digging into today.
Right.
This deep dive, it's all about getting into the mindset of Jeff Bezos, especially in those early days.
Yeah.
We're using his own words from this really interesting YouTube transcript to kind of pull out the core ideas that guided him.
So what are we focusing on?
We're looking specifically at his thoughts on passion, on taking risks, and maybe most importantly, the huge impact of the choices we make every single day.
Okay, so our mission here is to sort of extract those key lessons, maybe some surprising bits straight from his story about starting Amazon, but also the bigger life stuff that honestly applies to all of us.
Precisely. Hopefully, it gets you thinking differently about your own big decisions.
All right, let's set that scene then. We've got a young Jeff Bezos. This is pre-Amazon Titan.
Yeah, just a smart guy working in finance in NYC. High-pressure world.
And he had what most people would call, like, the ultimate golden handcuffs.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Secure, well-paid, respected. But then he goes to his boss, this guy he really admired, and tells him his plan. I'm going to start a company selling books on the internet.
On the internet, which back then was, well, not what it is now.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And the boss, apparently after this long walk in Central Park, listens and says something like, that sounds like a really good idea,
Okay.
but it would be an even better idea for someone who didn't already have a good job.
Ah.
Ouch.
Wow. That's
Okay.
pretty direct. So it's easy to talk about taking the less safe path, but how did he actually make that choice, facing that?
Yeah, the internal struggle must have been intense.
Did he have, like, a process?
Yeah.
A way of thinking about it?
He did, yeah. This is where his famous regret minimization framework comes into play.
Regret minimization.
Yeah. Basically, he projected himself forward in time. Imagine you're 80 years old, looking back on your life.
Right.
And he asked himself, would he regret trying this crazy internet bookstore thing and maybe failing? Or would he regret never trying at all?
And he figured the regret of not trying would be way worse.
Exactly. He suspected he'd always be haunted by the what if. It wasn't about avoiding failure. It was about avoiding that specific lifelong regret of inaction.
That makes sense.
And he says he's actually really proud of making that choice using that framework. It's a powerful idea, really, not just for business, for any big life decision.
It really forces you to think long term, beyond the immediate fear or comfort.
Right. What's the real cost of playing it safe?
So it's one thing to have that internal conviction, but how did it look from the outside? I heard this story about an early investor, Dave.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. Met Bezos maybe 25 years ago. Bezos is working out of his garage.
Literally a garage.
Yep. And he tells this investor, Dave, I'm going to start a bookstore in my garage. Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Someday I'm going to be the richest man in the world. I'll do over $100 billion.
Wow. Just casually drops that
Yeah,
in a garage.
apparently so.
Yeah.
And the investor, Dave, he just couldn't believe it. He said later, there was no such thing as $100 billion 25 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, context matters there. That number was astronomical.
Totally. It's like countries didn't have that much debt. And he just remembers laughing, kind of scoffing at this, 26-year-old kid?
Yeah.
Saying he'll be the richest guy in the world with just a garage and the internet.
That contrast is amazing. The investor's laughing, thinks it's a joke.
Right, just jesting.
But Bezos,
Yeah.
he's apparently already applauding himself. Like, he knew.
Convinced he was onto something huge at the exact right moment. It just shows that gap, doesn't it, between seeing the present limitations and seeing the future possibility.
It really does. It wasn't just about, like, market analysis for him. It was deeper.
A fundamental belief.
But, okay, having that belief when everyone else is skeptical, that's tough. Did Bezos ever talk about how you cultivate that? Like, practically? Especially when the world thinks you're nuts.
Well, he makes this really interesting distinction. He talks about the difference between having a job, having a career, or having a calling.
A calling.
Yeah. And he says, look, if you can figure out how to have a calling, you've basically hit the jackpot. That's the big deal.
So it connects to finding something deeper than just work.
Exactly. Which leads right into his ideas on passion.
Right.
He stresses how important it is to follow what you are genuinely, deeply passionate about. And he warns against just, chasing whatever seems hot at the moment.
Don't follow the trends, follow your internal compass.
Pretty much. It has to be intrinsic. And for him, what was that?
Inventing.
Inventing. He talks about being a garage inventor as a kid.
I love those stories.
Yeah, he made this automatic gate closer from, cement-filled tires.
Resourceful.
A solar cooker that he admits didn't work very well.
Okay, reality check.
And get this, baking pan alarms to catch his siblings.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's brilliant and slightly terrifying.
Yeah.
Little inventor indeed.
But it shows, right, that inventing, creating, problem-solving impulse was just in him. It wasn't about starting Amazon specifically at first. It was about the act of building something new.
And that connects to his point about loving your work.
Directly. He says, if you don't love your work, you're never going to be great at it. And it sounds maybe a bit cliche, but hearing his background, you see it's not just a feel-good line. For him, that passion wasn't just nice. It was essential fuel. Without it, you can't push through the hard stuff.
The inevitable setbacks, the grind.
Exactly. Greatness needs that fuel.
You mentioned he likes that phrase, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. It sounds military.
It is, yeah. He loves it.
How does that apply here? It feels counterintuitive, especially in tech. Isn't it all about speed?
Well, he says he's seen it work in literally every endeavor he's been involved in. It's not really about being slow. It's about being deliberate, methodical, precise. Okay. So avoiding rushed mistakes that actually slow you down in the long run.
That's the idea. Smooth, efficient progress, which ends up being faster than frantic, error-prone speed. And this idea of deliberate action connects to another one of his core philosophies.
Which is?
Be proud not of your gifts, but of your hard work and your choices.
Okay, that's a big one. Be proud of choices, not gifts. But surely gifts play a role. Being naturally good at something helps, right? Or maybe some people just don't have the same range of choices available.
That's a fair point, and he does address the gifts part. He says, look, gifts are things like being good at math naturally or being tall or, artistic talent. They're given to you.
Okay.
You didn't earn them. So while you can be grateful for them, you can't really be proud of them in the same way.
Right. Pride comes from effort.
Exactly. Pride comes from your choices. Choosing to practice math when it's hard. Choosing to put in the hours. Choosing to take that difficult, less certain path like he did.
Those are the actions, the things you do. Precisely. He says, we all get to choose our life stories. And it's the choices that define us, not our gifts. That's the heart of it.
Wow. And he frames this with a pretty stark choice too, doesn't he?
He does. He puts it as, will you choose a life of ease and comfort or a life of service and adventure?
And then he asks,
which one will you be prouder of when you're 80?
It definitely makes you think. He clearly favors the service and adventure path.
Seems that way. And maybe that ties into his optimism. He genuinely seems to believe that there's never been a better time to be alive.
Really? Despite all the challenges we see.
Yeah. He points to the sheer amount of inspiration, change, and invention and opportunity swirling around us. He sees potential everywhere.
So it comes back to choice again. How do you choose to engage with this time?
Exactly. Which leads him to pose this series of really powerful questions. They're designed to make you, the listener, think about how you're authoring your own life story.
Okay, let's hear them.
He asks things like, how will you use your gifts? What choices will guide you?
Will it be inertia, just drifting along? Or will you actively follow your passions?
Right. Will you just follow dogma, what you're told to think? Or will you strive to be original?
That ease versus service and adventure question again?
Mm-hmm. And will you wilt when people criticize you? Or will you stick to your convictions?
Ooh, that's a tough one. What about when you're wrong?
Yeah. Will you try to bluff your way out? Or will you have the courage to apologize?
And relationships.
Will you shield your heart from rejection? Or will you take a chance when you fall in love?
Play it safe or be a bit swashbuckling, as he puts it,
Mm-hmm.
especially when things get tough.
Yeah. Will you give up easily or will you be relentless?
Will you be cynical about the world or will you try to be a builder?
And finally, maybe the most fundamental. Will you be clever but at other people's expense? Or will you choose to be kind?
That's a lot of lists. It really covers the spectrum of a life lived intentionally.
It does, and he adds this interesting point about empowerment. He says if you can figure out how to provide tools and services that empower other people to deploy their creativity, then you're really onto something valuable.
Kind of multiplying the potential.
Exactly. And he even broadens the idea of gifts beyond just individuals. He talks about the gifts of civilization itself.
Oh, so?
He muses that figures from the past, like Jules Verne, Mark Twain, Galileo, Newton, if they could choose any era to live in, they'd probably choose now.
Because of the pace of change and discovery?
Yeah.
The tools we have?
Precisely. Because of the immense opportunity that surrounds us, building on everything that came before, it brings his whole philosophy of seizing the moment and making choices full circle.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've gone from that crazy garage prediction to the regret minimization framework, the power of a calling, and this fundamental idea that it's our choices, the hard stuff, the effort that we can truly be proud of, much more than any innate talent.
It's about agency, taking authorship of your life.
So the final thought for everyone listening, we all have gifts, maybe different ones, but we have them. And Bezos argues we live in this time of incredible opportunity.
Yeah, unprecedented, really.
So maybe the question is, what conscious choice are you going to make this week? It doesn't have to be huge, big or small, but a choice that moves you, even slightly, away from just drifting, away from inertia, and towards something, maybe service, maybe adventure, that the 80-year-old version of you would look back on and be genuinely proud of.
That's the challenge she leaves us with. What choice will you make?